All right, so today I'm going to actually start us by having a lesson that we're going to kind of do together. I want to kind of put this out here just in general. Let me go ahead and change something here real quick. There we go. We're going to be talking about something called predominance mapping. Okay. Last class, when we had our professor visit, we brought different variables in. Okay? We mapped some different things. You kind of took two factors that we thought maybe either were related or were not related. We kind of mapped them together. We saw where there were some crossover points potentially, and what some of those crossover points are going to be. So sometimes we can use a little bit different type of map. It might visualize in a similar way. We're going to take a look at this predominance mapping. Now, I want to just put this out here. Can everybody kind of face me for a second? I want to make sure this is heard and heard clearly. What we are going to map today, we are going to dip the toes into a little bit of political data. And I just want everybody to hear like this part of it clearly. In no way are we, and I'm not going to entertain it, we're not talking political opinion with the stuff that we're going to do. Okay, what we're going to do specifically is we're going to take a look at election result data from the 2020 presidential election. I just want to say, look, we're going to look at some things that are politically oriented, but I also want you to know, not from me, not from any of you, like we're not entertaining a discussion on opinion related to this stuff. I just want to use this as a sample set of data for us to see, like, look, this is one application of what we do with predominance mapping. Can we all have an understanding that's where we're going with this today? Good? Okay, awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at that. I'm actually going to show you two different ways to visualize predominance mapping. So here's what I want. Okay, everybody, now we're going to turn to our computers. We're going to go to add a layer. We're going to browse layers. As you remember, what's the default thing? Every time you go to add a layer, it always asks you to search into my content. We got to switch that to ArcGIS Online. And what I would like for you to search for, 2020 election. That's all you really have to type in. 2020 election. Now, before you start adding layers, please don't just start clicking away. The first thing that comes up is a state layer for the 2020 USA election. Now, again, not opinion, just facts. When a president is elected, what data is used to determine whether they win the election or not? Electoral votes in electoral college, which is determined by state. Okay, so there is value to seeing that in state data. But we're not going to look at that. We're going to actually look in a little bit more depth. For me, it is the third layer down where it says Presidential Election 2020 USA by county. And that is done by Esri Tutorials. We want to go ahead and add that layer. Now, when we add that layer, we are looking at a green map of the United States. We're looking at a green map of the United States where we have all of the counties. It doesn't matter to me which county, but do me a favor. Just select a county somewhere so we can look at the data that is being presented to us in this layer. Okay, I happen to choose apparently Randolph County in Missouri. It's just to say, again, it doesn't matter where you click, but we just want to look at what information we have. So object ID, which is just an ID number. Okay, then we have the state, then this county FIPS. Does anybody know what FIPS stands for? I'll be honest, I even just looked it up for last block and I forget. I know that the F and the I are federally identifiable protective system, protective service. It's not, it's something with the PS. But anyway, it is an identifying number. There is a state FIPS code that is a 2-digit code for each state. There is a county layer FIPS code. There is also a town or city FIPS code, depending on what layer of information we have. But right now we're only talking about counties. Just know that that is a unique number for each county. County name. But really what I want to focus on is kind of down here towards the bottom of our pop-up. Okay, we can see within that county, in that election, the number of total votes. Now, does that mean that that's the total population within that county? No, okay, because remember, not everybody votes. I know that presidential year elections usually have the highest voter turnouts, but even with that, there's still a number of people that, for whatever the reason, don't vote in those elections. So we see the total vote, we see the total vote for Democrats, total vote for Republicans, and the total vote for other, because usually there's write-ins or other candidates that we can have within that. And then the last two that are meaningful is the percent that have voted for Democrats and the percent that have voted GOP, which is the Republican Party. Okay, so that is the information that's presented within this layer. Now, as it is, again, this map doesn't really do a whole lot for us. But here's what I'd like for us to do. We've added that layer. I want to come back here to our layers pane on the left-hand side. Options, rename it. And all I want you to do, leave the layer name exactly the same. But I do want you to tack something onto the end of it. I want you to tack on predominance. 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 Just tack that onto the end of that title. And we're going to save these maps as our own. So for the title, just do your last name, 2020 election, predominance. We're going to add the tag of RVH. And something that I learned new from our professor visit last class, down here at the bottom, we really should be doing this all the time. Under the summary, what is this going to be? This is going to be the 2020 election predominance lesson. So we want to have something in there about it being a lesson. That way it is understood that this is going to be for educational purposes. Okay, so again, for the tag, RVH, summary, just 2020 election predominance lesson. All right, so we got this map of the U.S. We have each of the counties. We now have all of the information, the data that we needed to go ahead and talk about this election. Now, here's where predominance mapping has some power to this. Okay, we're going to come in under Edit Layer Style. And I'm actually going to have you do this two different ways. The first way in which we're going to do it, we're going to add two fields. And I want to do that as percent Democrats and percent GOP. All right, I see some people that are still in the saving map phase, so I'm just going to kind of stop here for a second. Please don't start jumping ahead. So once we have the map saved, we're going to edit style. We're going to edit style. We need to add two fields in, not just one. And I'm going to start us talking about percentages. Now, what is this going to do for us? This is going to allow us to actually map both of these features in the same way. We can actually see a comparison. We can see what is predominant. Question. You need to click the layer on the left-hand side, so it has to be highlighted. So just click on the title of your layer, and then you should be able to get back in. Okay. So we've selected percent Democratic, percent GOP. Just hit Add. And the first thing that comes up on this map is this crazy blue and white circle map. Okay, that doesn't really tell us a whole lot. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to change that style. We're going to scroll down a little bit to come down to predominant category. Now, predominant category, it's nice. We're going to style this just a little bit different for ourselves, but predominant category allows us to then kind of see by county what the largest data set is going to tell us from there. Now, I'm going to go in specifically under style options. I want everybody to do this with us. Once we have the predominant category, we need to go ahead and go to style options. Now, again, there is a reason why, I don't really know, but when we think of the Republican Party, what color is typically associated with them? Red. Right now it's kind of a maroonish red. Let's just go ahead. We'll change that to our quick, kind of more bright red. We'll just go ahead and leave that as that. Then what are we going to do for the Democrats? They are going to be blue. So kind of that royalish blue. And then we're going to hit done a couple of times. Going to get back to our map. By the way, I don't know why, but when we do this, our data goes missing for a lot of Alaska. I'm not worried about that right now. But we do come in here. We are under those style options. I do want to change under style options again. Go back to those colors. Click on. We want the GOP to be the bright red, the Democratic to be the more bright blue or royal blue. And look, I just want to talk about this map for a second. So let's kind of close the layer pane. Okay, hit done over here. And let's just take a moment. You guys can feast your eyes on the board once you have this map set up the way that we do. So this is based off of our 2020 election results, the presidential campaigns at least. And then as we take a look at this, we can notice a couple of things. One, let's try to understand what the visualization is here. Okay. When we go ahead and we take a look at it, we see that we have very rich areas of red. Okay? What does that mean on this map? Think about what we mapped here. Absolutely. Okay. That in that county, we have now stylized this in a way where if it was very highly, and on the percentage side, a very high percentage of the people that voted for the Republican Party, that is going to be a very bright red data point. Okay, and the converse of that also being true for the other party, meaning that the areas that are super bold blue are also going to be those that in that county, it was predominantly people that voted for Democrats. Now, also understand that the places that aren't super bold red and super bold blue, to me, are also very interesting data points. Sometimes it's not always the things that kind of hit you in the face in terms of that very first reaction. So at some point on yours, let's take a look. We unchecked something about the transparency. So we have to come back here, click on that, select that. All right. So I don't want to say non-data because every county here, actually there's one county in the middle of the U.S. that there's nothing, and there's a lot missing Alaska. But for taking a look at this as a quick snapshot, those places that are kind of the faded red and faded blue, those are also important places to consider. Because I want you to think about this. If you were a politician, and forget what side of the party, and you're trying to gain presidential election, do you necessarily want to campaign or spend money in places that are so deeply rooted one way or the other? Probably not. Because if it was the opposite of what you were looking for, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of people to switch sides. Okay? If it's so deeply rooted in your political party, then also you're not going to change a whole lot of minds by doing that. But where are the places that you may have the opportunity to change people's minds? Some of those that are kind of in that middle ground. So again, I want you to identify, just because it's not super bold red or super bold blue does not necessarily mean that those are places that are ignored. Often, actually, those are some of the places that are targeted when it comes to political campaigns and things to go ahead and gain voters. So you help me. Take a look at this map, and what if you didn't have a whole lot of context? What if we had just shown you this map? What might you believe about the information presented? Probably that the Republicans won the election. You may, take a look at that, like, hey, that would be either Republican one, or a lot of people really wanted to vote for Republican. Look at all the red on this map. What would you maybe believe about the blue? There is that too. But here's what I want to kind of come back to. Let's just choose. I'm going to come down to Texas. There's actually two places that are fairly close together. I have this county, what is that? McMullen County in Texas. In the county, you don't have to choose the same one as me, it's okay. But in this county that I've chosen, there were a grand total of 516 voters. And of that, 460 of them voted Republican. Now, again, that's a very deep red, county, but as a total that showed up for the election that day, 516 people, not a whole lot of people. And then if I were to come over here, let's say to New Orleans, okay, which is one that I'm just choosing that was just highly blue, I'm looking at the total votes of almost 178,000 people. Maybe to even make a point, one of our favorites, Los Angeles County, 4.26 million people in that county. So does this map do a good job of explaining what I'll just call population dynamics? No, okay? But you also have to understand, how did we feed data to this map? We did it of percentages. Okay? So that might be helpful to have those percentages. But to me, this is not a complete picture. Okay? It does show us areas, at least at the time of that election, of where people were voting and what they were maybe interested in supporting in terms of their politician of choice. But I want to take a look at this also from a slightly different lens. So let's do this. Okay, just go ahead, save your map. On the same map, I want you to go back and add the exact same data layer a second time. I want a second layer that is going to be 2020 election by county. Let's go ahead and let's find that. And we're going to add it again. And when we add it again, we should be back to that kind of green map of everything all over the place. Now, for a moment, we have a layer that has the presidential election 2020 USA, county predominance, the one that we had predominance in the end. I'm going to turn off the visibility on that one. I know that the new layer is on top of it, but with what we're going to do, I want to hide that as well. So now I'm going to come up to the new data layer. I want to rename this one. I do want to add predominance and count to the end of it. So predominance and count onto the name of that one. Now, I would like to, we have that layer selected, I would like to style this one a little bit differently. Okay, we have our information. In terms of the fields that we're going to enter, this time I'm going to ask you to add something a little bit different. Instead of percents, because again, percents are good to show certain things. We have to understand it comes with certain limitations. We can't really compare the county with 500-something people with the county with 4.2 million people. Okay, at least as an equal comparison. So let's try to add this. I'm going to ask you to select the field for Democrat and Republican. Remember that this is telling us the total number of votes for a Democrat and the total number of votes for Republican from that election. And when we go to hit add for that one, our map is going to look kind of funky again. We have a whole bunch of information here, but it's not really telling us a whole lot of valuable stuff. I'm seeing that some of you still have your, I don't know what's going on with some of your maps, but we'll take a look at it in a second. Okay. So instead of doing predominance mapping this time, I want you to scroll down. There is one that is predominant category and size. And once we select that, I want to go into style options for here. Now, what's interesting about this style of map, we actually have two different ways in which we can select our options. Okay, we have predominant category. Let's go into those style options real quick. Let's use that same color palette for Republicans and Democrats. So our bright red for Republican. My default for Democrat is gold. Let's change that to blue. Starting to look a little bit different. Okay, we can hit done here. Just know that if you wanted to, we can also go into the counts and amounts, and we can change some factors based off of here if we wanted that to look a little bit differently. I'm going to leave the circles as it is, but just know that it is an option for us to kind of modify some of those factors. I'm going to hit done, 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 and leave that as our map. I can't right now. I will soon. Okay. Now, in terms of our map, okay, let me zoom in just a little bit here across the U.S. Once you have this map, just kind of turn around for a second so we can have a brief chat about this. So understand that we're still mapping the same data. We've mapped it a little bit differently. But I think that we can draw some conclusions from this map as well. Maybe different conclusions we did from the last one. Okay. What stands out to you in terms of the data presented in this style of map? There's a lot of little red dots. Okay. Now understand that obviously the red indicating that that county, its predominant category, was still based on Republican being the favored one that's voted for. But it is also styled as small because of that as a total vote in comparison to a lot of our other areas. Okay, so yes, we have a lot of red dots. Obviously, we see a lot of that, especially across Midwestern part of the United States. But honestly, in every state, there are a lot of little red dots in some of those. There are some places where the red dots are a little bit bigger. Okay. But most of them are smaller. And what do we notice? There's a couple things to me that stand out about our blue dots. What stands out there? Some of them can be pretty big. And when you do a comparison, most of them are bigger than our red dots, which tells us what? I think on average, that's probably something we could say, that the counties that have been voting more for the Democratic side just simply have a larger population. Again, it's not the case for everyone, but I think a lot of them we could see that. And when we take a look at our really big dots, where are they? Those are cities. Those are major cities where we have a lot of people that are living. Anything else that we take away from this? That is an interesting point. And I'd like to maybe talk about that. Maybe not what it means on this political map, but what it means in general. You may not know this, but if you were to take a look at the eastern shore, so the eastern shoreline of the United States, 100 miles from that, going westward, every point of that, if you were to draw a region that would be 100 miles westward, from that point, roughly two-thirds of the entire United States population lives within 100 miles of the eastern shore of the United States. Well, if we ever drive on Interstate 95, we go up, past some of the places, we know why. There's a lot of people that are there, and those cities are closer together. When you think about it, you have, just in a fairly short stretch, you have New York City, you have Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, all within, just a couple hour stretch of each other. And those are some decently populated areas. In terms of counties, again, New York is an interesting one because New York City is separated into 5 boroughs. You have your different areas there. But New York, Chicago, and LA are definitely our larger cities. We see our largest dots in those places, again, because there's more people. Does that necessarily mean that all of those people are voting? No. But we have a lot more people voting in those places because we just simply have a lot more people in those places. Okay. Now, what we can do over here with our layers, I don't think that these two layers jive visualizing them together. Like if we were to go ahead and put both layers on, to me, that just becomes a confusing mess. But I would have to say neither of these maps by themselves tell the full story of what's going on. Now, I do think that one map shows a little bit more, information about this one. What we see about total population and what total population has a tendency to do with voting. Okay, we lose some of the sight of what we could see in our other predominance map, where are those places where we might call them swing counties, where we're closer to that middle mark, places we want to do. So here's why I show you this. Not because of anything political, but I want you to understand that we are kind of getting close to the time in GIS where we've built some GIS skills, and we're still doing a couple lessons and still learning a couple things. But we're really getting to the point where we are almost ready to start the discussion of making decisions based off of the information. And that's where I think we really start to hit the powerful part of GIS is, okay, now how do we take this and then make more informed decisions about what it is that we want to do? How do we take this information and change the way in which we're doing things so that it's better for whatever? Okay. So I show you this as a way of like, look, it's another tool that we can have in our toolbox. And if we wanted to go ahead and find ways to present one type of data that we might have like two different sides to and see where that would be, this would be a place where we could do that. Any questions on these maps?